Welcome out to our weekly conference call. It's December 21st. It's the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. Not that that has anything to do with our call. It's just a fun fact. But I wanted to, let's see here, yeah. I wanted to talk a bit about some of the skills that are needed to go diamond. I was talking to Rod before the call, and we were just kind of discussing the fact that there are certain skills that people have to develop in order to go diamond. And we all, you've probably heard this before, but when you come into doTERRA, there's a lot of people that hit ranks quickly. Or it may take them a while. And the real difference is that every single person has to grow. And they either did their growing before they got to doTERRA, or they're doing their growing during doTERRA. And they have to learn how to communicate with people before they get to doTERRA, or while they're in doTERRA, they've got to master those skills. So with that said, why don't we? I'd like to open this up to the mastermind and just ask, what are some of the skills that you feel are necessary for you to go diamond? I want to open that up to people who are already platinum or diamond initially. But what are some of the skills that you would say were critical for your advancement in doTERRA? I'm going to go to Rod Richardson first, since we were talking about this before the call. What are your thoughts on that, Rod?
I was reflecting on it, and I think I think as I go around and listen to people's different barriers that they have in getting people to respond to them, or getting a result, or getting a close, or getting things like that, I find that probably the number one skill in my mind is the idea of being able to communicate effectively. And so I've noticed that sometimes people are overbearing, and then most of the time people are too timid. And so there's kind of a social skill that needs to be developed, where you learn how to engage someone on an interpersonal level, and learn how to ask questions and how to be interested, and rather than talking too much or overbearing on somebody, or becoming almost too threatening. So I'd have to say the top skill that I can think of is learning how to interact and to be and to have good communication skills.
So I have a question for you then, Rod. Is that something that people are born with, or that they can actually develop? I mean, there are times when I'm working with people and they seem to have, as we call, the gift of gab. But it really isn't that, because even people who talk too much, that's not good communication. It's just someone who can't control the amount that they're speaking. But
I think it's kind of like running or playing an instrument or anything like that. If you're not disciplined about it, it's difficult to be good. And then if you become aware and you start to practice certain skill sets, I've noticed that people can become very good at communicating. Because sometimes it's like you and I have experienced, and sometimes it can be the volume of someone's voice. They're just not speaking in a way where they're not projecting enough to be heard very well. And sometimes it's just posture, which is mostly a reflection of personal belief inside, and that can come across in your communication. And so some of these things are becoming aware. But I know I'm a communication major, and I know that people train to be news anchors, and they train to be speech givers. And so I know that I know that there is a specific skill set that can be developed in a way to present, a way to articulate. Like some people don't pronounce their words clearly enough, and that's a skill. Just like singing or things like that. I mean, certainly there are talented people, but definitely there's skills that can be developed that develop you, just like running or anything like that, or
I
playing an
agree with
instrument.
you though, Rod. I mean, I agree because well, how to describe this? The essence of our industry is communication. It's our ability to communicate with others in a way that can, one is how do you communicate in a way that helps people remain open, right? Like there are times when we talk about the 3 doors of openness. We talk about, when you reach out to people and working with those who are open. And it's interesting that with some people, there's just a lot more people who are open. For example,
Right.
if I were to approach someone about door 3, about the opportunity, I would have a lot more people that are all of a sudden open to that, where they may not be open to someone else. And I think it has mostly to do with your personal belief and mindset. But I know that a lot of it is the skill, the way that you approach a topic with someone. Those are all kinds of skills that you have to master. But when I'm thinking about it, I'm just kind of going, okay, so how does a person do this? How do they master the art of communication? I think that if I were to give my gut reaction to that is it comes down to one of Stephen Covey's habits when he said first seek to understand and then seek to be understood. And I when I listen to people communicate nowadays, that's even especially in our political culture, if you ever watch like news, news channels where they're talking to people from either political spectrum, no one is seeking to understand, but they're all seeking to be understood. And as a result, it just ends up becoming this yelling match, and everyone's yelling at each other or whatever it may be, but no one's seeking to truly understand. But I think the ability to understand where someone's coming from is probably one of the greatest communication skills that people don't even understand.
Right. Truly listening. And, just to re-emphasize how people can actually learn a communication skill, as we were talking, I realized that if you want to be an auctioneer, for example, no one comes out of the womb as an auctioneer. It's a speech pattern that you have to learn. And the same thing with language itself. Like I made an attempt to start to learn Japanese a couple of years ago, and I had to make a very purposeful effort to learn that language, and I made a study of it. I got in and actually studied the sound of the language and the pronunciation and things like that. And so I realized it just brings back the point that is communication or good communication a skill you can learn? Absolutely. And if people are poor at communication, it's just like picking up an instrument that you've never practiced or never studied. Of course you're not going to be good at it. But with direction and training and practice, you can become pleasant with an instrument, even if you're not a world-renowned record label player or something like that. You can still become pleasant to listen to, just through the simple act of practicing and getting direction and learning and studying it.
All right, then that begs the next question. That is, how do people practice? How do you get the practice needed to become proficient at it?
I think in my mind, it's practice comes in the actual attempt to implement. So for example, in my Japanese expedition, I had gotten some tapes on the language, and so I was learning some basic phrases, and then I found myself at a table with Japanese people, and so I tried to implement it. And the interesting thing is, I told them, I said, I know a little bit of Japanese, and so I said the Japanese phrases that I had been experiencing, and all of a sudden they all laughed and they erupted and go, oh yeah, we know what you said. And so it worked. but ironically, I still couldn't understand them yet.
Yeah, exactly.
So I hadn't been exposed. I hadn't practiced enough. And the same thing, I learned an instrument and it was very difficult for me because my hand-eye coordination isn't naturally strong. And so when I first picked up the banjo, I could hardly play it. I could barely coordinate the plucking of the string with the placing of my string. And now at this point, I've actually done a record. I've created professional recordings. And so, but I got there by studying music, working with a music instructor, which is basically equivalent to a mentor or a trainer, and then playing over and over again. And then I threw myself into the music world, and actually was forced to play in some bands and things like that. And then gradually over time I got better. And the same thing with painting, with art. Same thing. The first time I picked up a brush, I couldn't hardly draw a straight line. But then I got to a point where I actually was offered money for paintings. And so, but all of that came with learning the field, being instructed with a trainer, and then practicing and practicing and practicing, and then throwing it into experiential, using it, getting out and actually putting it into action.
Yeah, I think you're kind of hitting on. I think you're actually really hitting on it, because if I were to take what you've taught so far and try to apply it to someone who's trying to learn the skill of communication, is that first go and learn, make a conscious effort to learn the art of communication. And there are plenty of books about it, and in particular, sales books. If you get really good sales books, what they really are is how to communicate with someone in a manner that they can make a decision that other than just no. And so and what it really could be is make an effort to learn the skills and then practice it by implementing it while you're building your business. Try to read or listen to or go to a seminar on how to communicate or sell or close or whatever it is. And then while you're doing your doTERRA business, constantly be practicing those skills so that you can master it. And I think that's, I mean, wouldn't you say, I mean, I don't want to be putting words in your mouth, but I think that's what you're saying, is that first learn the skill, whether it's Japanese music, art, whatever it happens to be, or in this case, communication, and then practice it while doing it, like while implementing all of this, try things out.
Exactly. And I think it's really easy to see what you need to learn just by taking an assessment of what your current results are. So if you're teaching classes and not getting enrollments, for example, then it's pretty clear that the closing is your skill barrier. Or if you're setting up a class but you can't get anyone to show up, well, then it's pretty clear that your invitation skills are lacking. Or maybe you're just not inviting enough people. There's enough, there's plenty of things at play there, but then you start to narrow it down. So taking an assessment of your current results and then focusing your learning, in a serious manner right on that thing. And then I think the other part that could be added to this is being okay. It's okay that you suck. And so if you're running into a barrier, if you're determined to succeed, I mean, all of us sucked at the beginning. Like I sucked at teaching classes because I didn't know squat about essential oils, and so that's something I had to become more comfortable with, learning what they were and confident in my own experiences and things like that before. And then I was thrown into the fire. I remember the day of teaching my first class. You and I had been going to the corporate office where they've been showing a slide presentation every week, and then one day we showed up and no one was there to teach, but people came to learn. And so I remember going, well, I guess I could do it. And then I went through it, and I've been teaching ever since. And so I think if most people, when they realize they suck, that's when they quit. Right? That's
yeah,
like,
they say stuff like,
I can't.
They'll say stuff like, well, I'm just not a salesperson, or I'm just not this, or whatever it is. And it's like, that's like sitting down at a piano and playing a couple chords and go, well, I'm just not a piano person. I just can't do it.
Right. Yeah, it's as ludicrous as that, as sitting down and going, well, I just can't play. And I can't play like Mozart. Jeez.
Yeah.
Of course you can. And no one can. So it doesn't, we don't have to be Mozart. But anyone can learn how to play the piano. And
Right.
you can become reasonably effective at it. Virtually anyone. Even people with not all their fingers, I've seen master a piano. I remember watching a guy with 2 fingers actually play almost as beautifully as, actually better than most people I've heard play. And it was just because the person was determined, and they overcame their physical limitation on it, and they just went for it, focused on it, learned it, practiced it, threw themselves in the fire. They probably sucked for a long time, and then they got good.
Actually, so Alonto has his hand raised. I want to go to him. But, Rod, I want you to think about something while I'm talking to Alonto. Who have you seen where it literally was very difficult for them to do this, to communicate in regards to their doTERRA business? Like, their capacity to invite, teach, enroll, and duplicate was very limited. And then through a process of practicing, they mastered it and became great. I'll be thinking about it too, but I really do want to give some. I know that they're out there, like there's these examples, and I'm just kind of thinking, I hope people realize that what we're teaching them is true. And I was thinking maybe we could give them some real life examples. Alonto, what is your comment?
Okay, I love this topic of communication, and really the thing that comes to mind is why communication, right? So start with the question, what is the purpose of communication? And the first thing that comes to mind when I ask that question is to be able to have the person see, hear, feel, taste, or smell what you have in mind. Does that make sense? So to be clear with the vision that you see, the feeling that you feel, the taste, the smell, because if you're able to do that, if someone can see, feel, taste, like taste, and be like in that moment where I got it, I see it, like it clicks, then you've done your job when it comes to communication, right? And once you've taken care of that question of what's the purpose, and then you ask the question, how do I communicate, right? So you take all the masters out there when it comes to their craft, right? When it comes to like that master chef or that master speech person, it's usually them painting a picture or them allowing you to experience what they're experiencing so that you see and feel, and you're in this like experiential when it comes to your senses, that you experience the same thing that they're experiencing. And
yes,
one of the greatest tools to be able to do that is the idea of metaphors and parables, right? So like painting a story or painting a kind of a way for them to relate to the new thing that you're trying to teach. So take like the teachings of Jesus, for example. So here you have Jesus trying to teach people the kingdom of heaven, right? Where it's totally foreign to them, but he utilizes things that they knew to relate the concepts and the picture that he sees with the people that he's trying to teach or communicate the message with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It's a great example. I mean, we're 4 days away from celebrating his birth, and he's known as he has many titles, but one of his titles is a teacher, the master teacher, and he used parables and metaphors all the time.
So one of the greatest tools when it comes to like what I utilize as a metaphor for like getting someone to see the picture of diamond is the whole idea of the cash flow quadrant, right?
Mm.
The cash flow quadrant identifies all the different roles that you can play in any business, right? You can play as an employee, you can play as a self-employed, you can play as a business owner, and you can play as an investor. And the thing that I help people through is like with whatever you're doing right now, you fall in line with one of the four. You're either an employee, you're either a self-employed / manager / subject matter expert, you're either a business owner or you're an investor in whatever marketplace that you're playing in. And I ask the question, do you want to stay there or do you want to move forward with what a different thing that you want in your life? Do you want freedom? Do you want that idea of being an investor where money makes money for you? You don't have to trade in that time. And once they see that progress or that process of in their own market, like how to go from like employee to self-employed to business owner to investor, and how much effort, how much resources, how much time that would take for them to do that. And then you show them a picture of how they could do that with doTERRA in like a fraction of the time and literally no risk, like no capital when it's compared to like what they would do in the first place. And you can show them like the steps to get there. It literally clicks. It literally, they're like, oh, now I see. And that's the process that you develop as far as a skill to get them to that point of now I see, or now I know. I've experienced from the past connecting like what I knew with something that's very foreign.
Yeah.
If it's very foreign for them, if they can't see it, if they can't feel it, there's no way they'll ever find a way to get there. Because
Alonso, you're clarifying a lot of stuff here because really what you're saying is that someone who can communicate is somebody who can make clear, like who can paint a picture. Like for example, you think about how when we do a business overview and we share the story about the buckets and the pipelines, why do we share the story? Well, it's because it's this example that if someone reads it or understands that story, they now understand the difference between a bucket and a pipeline, which is really the cash flow quadrant. In fact, that's the cash flow quadrant book. That's where the story of the buckets and pipeline came from. And it's like that's a story that helps someone understand the concept of residual reoccurring income as opposed to effort-based income. And I think that, you know, as you're just describing all of this, what's kind of come to mind is that we can all practice this by even like, can you explain to someone your vision in a manner that it becomes their vision, that they can see it in their mind's eye? Can you explain something to someone where they get it in a manner that, like, even like I don't think that sales is talking someone into something. I think it's explaining something so clearly that people make informed decisions. And when you explain something that has a high value proposition, most people make the informed decision to do it, to be a part of it, to partake of it, right? But if you can't communicate in a manner that if the picture is fuzzy in their mind and they're not grasping the value of essential oils, they're not grasping the difference it's going to make in their lives. It's kind of like why when you explain, you know, you could say, okay, peppermint essential oil does this, this, and this. But if you share a story of what the peppermint oil did for you or for someone else, it paints a vivid picture in someone's mind of when they would use it. instead of just spouting off facts about it. And so, as we always say, facts tell, but stories sell. Well, the stories sell because people get it, like they comprehend it. Did you have any other thoughts on that? I just loved how you were describing communication, because I just wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and another thing that came to mind when it comes to, like, when you pose the question, is this something that you're born with, or is this something that you develop? Right? And automatically, like, this experience that I've had when it comes to, like, describing integrity, and how this person utilized an analogy again of, imagine yourself like walking for the first time, right? Imagine yourself as a baby, right? So you're in this space of trying something totally new in your life that you've never done before, right? You're trying to gain your balance. You're trying to make that first step. And you might fall down the first time. You might fall down a number of times. But do you say to that baby, oh, you've fallen so many times, so let's just forget you ever walking? Like, let's forget that you have that capacity to be able to do what everyone on this planet, every human being is able to do. Like, do we go there when it comes to things like that? And if we treat the things that we come to as far as communication, as far as like integrity, as far as all these things that are foreign initially to us, and literally treat it as this like proverbial walking in communication, right? So like pretending that you're in that stage of walking, like you're stumbling, you're falling, you're doing all these things that you would normally go through initially in that process. And do you say to yourself, okay, I'm done, no longer am I going to be able to walk? Or am I going to keep going and treat it like my experience when it comes to walking? And I kept on doing it. I kept on falling, but every single time I got better. Every single time I developed that skill to now not only walk, but like run, but like, and run like at a quick pace for some people, like to be as fast as like some of the fastest animals out there. Is that something that you have when it comes to what you're capable of doing, and to relate it in that way?
Yeah. Thank you. I think as man, okay, so we talked quite a bit about communication, the skill of communication. Rod, did you have anybody that came to mind?
Actually, I have a number of people that have come to mind. And one of them, and I probably should give a shout out, is Delora Allen. And I remember she's been with us in doTERRA for a long time. And I remember in the beginning expressing some difficulty attracting people and things like that. And the volume of her voice was really, really low, or soft, I guess would be a better word. Really soft voice. So it's, and then we fast forward a few years, and then she invites me to meet with her team at convention, and there she is with a whole group of rock stars. And so along the way, you know, when you get around Delora today, she dresses real professionally, and she's serious about her business, and she's intentional. She was at our Christmas party, and when the guest speaker Desiree was speaking, she had her notebook out and her pen up and was taking notes, and so she's an avid and attentive learner as well, really pushing herself against areas where maybe she had difficulty getting results in the past. And so that's an example where I think I've watched somebody really rise. And another person that really rose was Courtney Moses. And I remember some of my early experiences with Courtney, even getting her to talk on the phone. For example, during our early Mastermind calls. And I remember her calling up and wanting to throw up and things like that for the fear of presenting and things like that. And then and as she still has a lot of those emotions and things like that, but she's arguably one of the top communicators in the team. And so it's just fascinating. I remember you and I were in Ireland talking to Martin Glenn, and then he was asking why won't people follow, and the topic came up because he wasn't projecting his voice. It was difficult to hear him, and then he went out and got a decibel reader and put it in his car, and then shortly afterwards started to notice that his team was responding to him better. And so I just started thinking about it, and I realized most of us are a miracle. Given the weaknesses that we came against. I remember even myself, years before doTERRA, I went and served a mission for my church. And I remember one of the activities that we had to do was approach people on the street. And I remember being so overcome with that because I was a cowboy, so I just rode in silence most of my life. And I remember having to do that, and I remember getting so worked up, so much anxiety that I would just sit down and cry most of the time. And then I'd kind of get over myself, and then I'd push myself into it. And then over time, it just got easier and easier as I learned what to say. And then I became marginally fearless. And then I think at one point I was labeled basically the top communicator in the mission. And so I think there's lots and lots of examples.
Yeah, this is so fascinating because I'm thinking back to my life, and when I was a kid, my mom, she made candy for the Christmas season, and she would there was 10 kids in our family, and so she would send us out to go and to these different sales to sell candy. And I just think back at that. I mean, I was just a young kid, and people are walking by, and I'm asking them, would you like a sample? And I'm explaining to them how the candy was homemade and how delicious it was and things like that. And I just look back and I just chuckle to myself because I'm like, from a very young age, I had to overcome the fear of reaching out to someone and then striking up a conversation with a complete stranger and then explaining to them in a manner that they'd be able to get what it is that I was trying to say to sell candy. And anyways, I guess my point is that you're right. I guess the more I think about it, the more I realize that the skills can be developed, and and basically you just have to have a strong enough reason to do it. Okay, so for those of you who've been coming onto the call, we were talking about the necessary skills to go diamond, and where we ended up was basically the skill of communication. And however, I would like to take the last half of this call and discuss some additional skills. We can get into maybe specifics of what kind of communication skills. But I'm opening this up to the platinums and diamonds on the call. Unless you have a comment that you've realized a critical skill that you've had to develop to advance in the ranks that you're advancing in doTERRA, then feel then please feel free to open up to hit *5 or raise your hand. Otherwise, I'd like to ask again, what are you noticing? What are the skills that you or the people on your team have had to develop in order for them to succeed at this, for them to truly be good at it? *5 to raise your hand. Melissa. Go ahead, Melissa.
Hey, Seth, thank you so much. Along the lines of communication, a skill that I've, noticed in very successful people, this is definitely a skill that Rod has that I admire in him, and it's one that I've been striving to develop in myself, is the ability to ask great questions and to answer a question with a question. So, for example, oftentimes I go to Rod for mentoring. I'll have a situation or something that I'm wanting to get some counsel and guidance on, and he easily could just say, do X, Y, Z, Melissa. But instead, he will ask a question that causes me to have to think and come up with my own solution. And by doing so, I own that solution. And,
right.
And so, and we can do that in all aspects of our business, whether it's the initial contact, whether it's in the process of teaching the class, whether it's at the point of enrolling, whether it's we're mentoring a team builder. We can learn that process of asking really powerful questions that move that person to, come up with their own solution and own that. And they're more motivated then to take action when they've been involved in the solution process versus us just telling them what to do.
Right. Sometimes that skill drives me up the wall because I would love for Rod to just tell me the answer.
Yeah.
But your point is still very valid because you're like, oh my gosh, like he'll present it in a way to where you go to him and say, hey, what do you think I should do about this? And he'll say something like, well, what do you think you should do? Like, well, I've been thinking this, and really, I think the key is he's helping you figure out that the answer lies from within. Why do you do that?
I do that so you'll believe the answer. I've told people what to do a number of times, and there's very little follow through.
So in the end, it's because we're the opinion that matters most, right, to ourselves.
Right. So in that questioning process, usually what I'm trying to do is help you trust answers that you already know, and sometimes it's just by looking at all angles of the issue, so that you trust what you already know in your heart.
Yeah. And well, this is a skill that everybody has to learn because mentoring is a big part of what we do. And I think that the fact is that if I think a lot of what mentoring is helping people realize that they have the answers and that they can trust in those answers. Is that right, Rod? Is that what you're saying? Like, I know that you've taught me in the past that, if you ask the question, the answer will follow. And I think that a lot of what you're saying with that is that the answers are already there. We can trust the answers that are there. And a lot of it's just being willing to trust those answers.
Right. Well, in my case, for example, there's some decision processes and stuff that you've been working on that are substantial, meaning that, they're effectually a lifestyle shift or different, things that are highly impactful or could have high amounts of risk or benefit. And so our discussions have largely been about pros and cons, of all different types of scenarios. And in doing that, a lot of times an answer becomes more obvious.
Right. Good. Let's see here. Melissa, did you have any other thing that you wanted to add to that?
That's good for the moment. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I will share something that having you just bringing you up on the call actually reminded me of. One of the skills that I believe people have to learn is the skill of reading. That they need to, because you run the book club every week, and I was just thinking, you know what? Developing the desire and the love and passion for reading and gaining knowledge and the desire to become better and the willingness to do it, that's part of it. Like, if you come into this and say, I just don't have time to read, I don't have time to fill my mind with positive information, that is a skill in and of itself. And I'd say that that's one of the things that you've been a great example of.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. Courtney, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to say that same thing, actually. I've noticed that when I'm stagnant or when my team is stagnant, that it really comes down to personal development a lot of the time, right? You're only going to be able to lead a team as large as you are as a person. And I think that is a really critical skill to work on becoming better and that best version of ourselves, right? And I think if I could pin that down into one word, it'd be teachable. You have to be teachable because you can read, you can learn, you can go to seminars, you can go listen to Rod, ask you questions. By the way, I think he does that just to make us mad. But, if you're not in a position to be teachable, then you're not going to retain any of that information, right? And so in order to become more, you have to be teachable. And that's hard. And, in fact, you and I were just talking about this a few weeks ago. We talked about this event that you're going to in January. And you're like, I want to go because I need to learn from these people. And I think that's really difficult sometimes to admit that maybe there's something that we still don't know, right? And that you're willing to be teachable. So I think that's pretty critical.
I agree. In fact, the longer I do this, people will ask, what do you look for in a leader? And I'd say one of the top 2 traits that I look for is, are they teachable? Because if they're unwilling to take mentoring and counsel, the whole process becomes so painful. You're just like, I just don't even know if I want to go down this road with this person.
And the thing about
because it's going to take so much pain for them to get it.
Yeah, and the thing about this one is that it's totally within them. You can't just tell them, go be teachable, right? It's like there has to be a desire within you to even learn that attribute.
Right.
So it takes a lot of humility to be teachable.
Right, and there's phrasing that I'm familiar with is that you can choose to be humble or you can be compelled to be humble. And choosing to be humble is just simply choosing to be teachable, as opposed to being compelled to be humble because you got this, your will is being bent, by the circumstances of your life. You run into that wall so many times that it hurts so bad that you finally go, is there another way? And then all of a sudden the humility comes in and you're able to learn. I agree. Great point.
Yeah. One thing I want to bring up too, if you don't mind, back on, communication. We talk a lot about different personalities. Obviously, we work with a lot of different personalities in our own organizations, And I think that when we talk about communications, it's really important to understand different personality types. And the reason for that, if you look at just committing a builder, for example, I'm sorry, by the way, for my background noise, I won't even begin to talk about what's happening. But if you look at like committing a builder, for example, if you're talking to somebody that their personality type is all about the facts and the numbers and they need the science and all that behind it, and all you're talking to them about is the healing and the hope that oils can bring, you're not going to get them to commit to build. So you need to understand personality so you can talk to people according to their language to help them commit, right? And so I think it's really important. Again, this comes down to personal development of understanding that. But I think that also ties into communication, that you need to understand that personality type, that language that they're speaking, so that you can speak to them in that way to help them, bring doTERRA in alignment with who they are as an individual.
Right. Perfect. Thank you very much, Court. These are great comments. Sarah Schmidt, I just unmuted your line. Go ahead.
Hi, Seth. I just wanted to add that on this journey, I think we really have to learn the skill of personal strength when we hear the word no or when we hear nothing, cricket, because it can be really defeating at first. And I think that's why a lot of people stop, and you just have to keep going if you really truly believe in what you're doing. So that's been a big one for me, just knowing that it's okay. And no's don't mean no's today, They may mean that today, but maybe not tomorrow, or, just keep going. And
yeah, that's a good point, Sarah. I mean, as you're describing that, I'm kind of thinking, I do know that is a skill, like the skill to take rejection and keep going. Mm-hmm. Personal strength is how you defined it. How else would you define that? It's like,
you said it pretty well. I mean, I know that when I first started, it was hard for me to hear, and I can hear no, but I can see in some of my people that have been in my organization that's been a real tough thing for them, and sometimes that's why they may not continue. For some of us, it's easier
absolutely.
than others. But I mean, to go back to this is kind of separate. I feel like my husband and I are kind of an example of coming into this business, not really knowing what we're doing, not even really understanding what network marketing is completely, but believing so much and having to learn all the skills. So it's taken longer, but as we continue to go and we just follow the steps, it's just a matter of time until we're there. Period.
Right.
So,
Perfect. Thank you for bringing that up. I actually, it's kind of funny it's taken this long to get to that skill in this call, but I actually don't know of that may be the most important. Your capacity to take no and rejection and keep going. I mean, even like we were talking about the importance of practicing communication skills, but if you don't have resolve to continue forward after getting rejection, then it doesn't matter. You're never going to, you're never, like we even talked, we were talking about playing a musical instrument. If you can't handle hitting the wrong note occasionally, you're just never going to keep going at all. And, then we start discussing, well, that's why you have to have a strong reason why is to get you through all of that. But I just think a lot of it is just strength of character. The fact that you have the capacity to keep moving and to keep persisting, which requires that strong person, that strength of character that's going to take them through hard times. Thank you for bringing that up, Sarah. That's critical. That is massive. Thank you. Alonso, did you have another thought?
Yeah. So when you were asking other skills, and we're kind of in a situation right now when it comes to being in a new area and not really having a lot of presence when it comes to doTERRA, is as a leader, even at the level that we're at, be able to kind of have that humility and humble yourself to go to the beginning, go to the foundations that really led you to where you're at today. So when it comes to the whole idea of finding, teaching, and enrolling, going to that and not have the focus all the time on duplication. Yeah, duplicate. That's how you're gonna leverage your abilities and your skill, but to consistently show that to the people that are in your organization that are following in your path, to be able to still share the oils, to still teach the classes to still do all these things that are foundational when it comes to building your business. And from the things that I've seen as far as like diamonds and above, like frustrations and all that stuff comes from that aspect of, so since I'm at this level now, I don't have to do like the basics, where really the basics is the secret to like your growth, because not only are you able to grow it, but by that example, you show your leaders that you're still in the fight. You're still in the muck of things and doing the things that they're doing every single day.
Right. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you everyone for participating on this call. You know what? It's 12:52. We've got 8 minutes left, but it's Christmas. And, and I know that a lot of you have so much you want to do. And so I'm just going to say, I feel like we've been fed today properly, and appreciate all of you being here on the call. Take time to learn these skills, and like Sarah said, just have the strength of character to keep going when it gets hard, because it is going to get hard. And so just keep going and master these skills so you can make a difference in a lot of people's lives. I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas this weekend, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks so much.